so interesting you kind of took this there because I wasn't expecting to talk too much about it.
Once I accepted that and was able to share it, it was a game changer for everything. I think it's good that I did that because I can relate to people in the business world now.
It's okay. Oh, I love it. Welcome back to I Can Fit That In. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your attention. Today's guest brings an incredibly thoughtful and much needed perspective on something that we all have navigated or will navigate: anxiety and resilience in our high performing lives. Dr. David Rosmarin is a board certified psychologist and an associate professor at Harvard Medical School. And he's also the founder of the Center for Anxiety, which has served over 10,000 individuals across multiple states. David's latest book, Thriving with Anxiety: 9 Tools to Make Your Anxiety Work for You, brings a refreshingly practical and empowering approach to anxiety, helping people understand it, work with it, and even use it as a tool for growth. His insights have been featured everywhere from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe to Good Morning America. And what really sets David apart is his ability to take complex psychological concepts and make them accessible, actionable, and truly human. In today's conversation, we are talking about anxiety in the context of leadership, ambition, parenting, and the modern workplace, and how to build resilience and clarity when life feels overwhelming. This will be one that you'll want to revisit, so let's dive in. David, welcome.
Erin, thanks so much. That introduction made me very anxious. Setting the bar way high.
Hopefully you live up to it. I'm just kidding. So obviously we shared your accolades with everybody. And, for everyone that comes on this show, we are these high performing, very ambitious, high achieving people. So that is a given. But what it doesn't tell us is, who is David?
Okay. We can start anywhere you want.
Yeah. Let's go to what's your background? Like your childhood, your personal life.
Childhood. Wow. You want to start way back. Well, I'm going to bump up a little bit. I became a psychologist about 20 years ago. I've been working in the field and I never really dealt with my own anxiety. I think, a lot of talk therapy is good and supportive and, has its place. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it sometimes can cover things up as opposed to really just being real and learning, as a clinician to be able to embrace that aspect of myself. That was certainly nothing I ever learned in my professional training. And sometime over the last 5 years, I'm like, you know what, to hell with this. Like, let's be real. Let's actually dive in here. And it's opened up a whole different way of approaching the subject of anxiety. My own anxieties definitely started in childhood. And, I grew up in Toronto, Canada. My father was an accountant and, money and finances, definitely loomed large in the home and financial anxiety. My mom was a social worker. So I sort of, leaned towards that. Then the next thing you know, though, I started a company providing mental health. So I sort of swung back a little bit. And now I'm sort of trying to find a happy medium in the middle. So there's some personal, some professional, and
I love
stuff.
No, I love this. You and I definitely share. It's interesting because you come at anxiety from a clinical perspective, but you also have the lived experience. And definitely. In my perspective, while I was on Wall Street in my early 20s, I was getting a real life MBA. And all of my friends who came from very wealthy families, of which I grew up beneath the poverty line and put myself through college. So I know the anxieties of all of what you described from childhood. But I saw all these people going to get their MBA and their parents are paying the 200 grand for it, right? And I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to get the real life experience, like the lived experience. Like I don't need the credential to be able to have a successful career. I'm good. So that clinical perspective that you have is so important in the world of psychology. And yet what you're saying is you're making this more human and accessible for everybody. And that's that is not only important in this day and age of the modern world we live in. Like people want relatability. They want authenticity. And if something sounds too inaccessible, they're going to tune out and not really learn, right? So if they're not in therapy, how else are they learning about how to make their anxiety work for them?
Yeah, I don't think therapy does that. And to be clear, I think therapy does have a place and so does pharmacology. Like when anxiety is getting in the way of your life and it's a clinical issue, you do need to take more of a tactical, practical approach using a professional hat. And that's definitely something that I know how to do. I guess what I was trying to get at before, and just to emphasize, is normal anxiety that people experience. Anxiety is an emotion, not as a clinical disorder. That is something I never dealt with. And I don't think talk therapy is the right address necessarily for that. I think we need to be reading. I think we need to be connecting with each other. I think we need to be doing what matters in life, which is something you're teaching the world, which is amazing. And I think we need to be more grounded and not try to eliminate all of our anxiety from our existence. The minute we try to do that, it actually compounds it and makes it worse. So the clinical approach definitely has its place, but not for anxiety, which everybody has. It's really specifically for clinical problems.
Right. And like what you're talking about, it reminds me of a course that I took at MIT during the pandemic, which was on the neuroscience of business and leadership. So what I learned is actually nothing new, but I learned the science behind the stuff I already knew, the practices that I had been working with in my own life and with my clients for years. And I think what's really unique about what you said and relating it to this is there was a study where I learned that 80% of the time, anxiety or negative thoughts are actually not a clinical issue. 20% of the time they are. They're like a chemical imbalance or a disorder or something that needs to be treated with psychotherapy, perhaps pharmaceuticals, etc. But for 80% of us, a lot of the times it's our own thoughts that are actually getting us into this tough place. It's like the fear response center. It's what the thoughts then create, which are these emotions, which you're talking about, anxiety being an emotion. So can you fill us in a little bit on that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's 20% or if it's 5% or more or less. I think it depends also on age. Younger adults today are experiencing substantially more clinical anxiety for reasons that we might get into during the conversation today. But if the goal is to get rid of all of your anxiety, you lose the fight. You won't be able to, and you don't want to. Yeah. I've never met a successful person who has no anxiety. Anxiety propels you, it moves you, it has you focused, it has you potentially connecting to others and maybe even relating to them in a different way. And all of that's very positive if you use it in the right way. If you try to get rid of it, then you really can get into some serious trouble. One of the reasons I think rates of anxiety disorders have gone through the roof today is because our society is so hell-bent on getting rid of all feelings of anxiety completely. We're very focused on our control. We want to never feel unmoored or uncomfortable. And it's not a real expectation. And as a result, prescriptions go up, treatments go up, and ironically, anxiety goes up with them, as opposed to learning to accept it, metabolize it, use it in a constructive way. And if it gets in the way of your life, then that's a whole different conversation.
So interesting. You kind of took this there because I wasn't expecting to talk too much about it, but I have boys that are almost 10 and 11.
Oh.
And my almost 11-year-old in particular, he knows some friends at school who actually have ADHD, like they've been, diagnosed with that. And so here and there, when he feels like he's kind of being extra hyper or has extra energy that he needs to release, he'll be like, maybe I have ADD or ADHD.
Yeah.
And I am like, oh my gosh, like you have to stop just trying to label yourself. And like that, by the way, even if you do, like, that's not a thing that you just throw around,
No,
this is something
not.
that like a doctor actually figures out. And you don't have enough of an issue for me to say, I need to take you to a doctor for that. So
if it's getting in the way, if they're getting thrown out of class every day, if they're, not able to study on tests, not able to function in certain areas of life, then that's a different conversation. But if they're doing well and just happen to be a bubbly, kid who's got extra energy, like you're lucky,
I know,
and
like,
the same thing with anxiety. If you feel that apprehension and a little bit of a pit in your stomach when you're walking into work and you're facing a big task, you're going into a sales meeting, you're starting with a new vendor even, you're onboarding a new staff member, you're releasing a new product, you're making risky bets, you're making decisions as a thought leader, as a business leader rather, you're going to feel anxious, you're going to feel concerned. And that's all part of the process of pushing yourself beyond your limits, which is what you signed up for as a business person. So that's all of that can be very healthy unless it's getting in the way. which often it is not. I agree with you. Maybe it's, like I said, 80, maybe it's even higher
Yeah. Right.
of the time percent.
Right. It reminds me too of the years I spent on Wall Street, and as a young woman, I
Mm-hmm.
reported to some pretty toxic leadership at a certain point of my career there.
Yeah.
And the amount of fear that was instilled through authority, through insecurity being projected, through a lot of sort of inhumane treatment caused levels of anxiety in myself that were pretty unprecedented. I had these fainting spells and
Oh, wow.
rashes that could not be treated with anything but steroids because they just wouldn't go away. I had appetite issues, a lot of fatigue, like things that for a woman in her mid to late 20s should not have been happening. Now, I can't blame that on one single person. The reality of it was I didn't have the skill set within myself to navigate what was happening. I couldn't navigate those emotions because I wasn't taught how to do that. No adult that I know was taught that as a child. And so I took it upon myself to learn things like meditation and mindful practices and breathing, being present in nature more often, the things that really helped me ground and the things that helped me get back to my own center. So what would you say it is for you are those things that you've practiced in your life, and what do you see people that you work with practice that really work for them?
The turning point for me was when I realized that speaking about my anxiety was a connector with my family, specifically with my wife. That she would listen and actually hear me out and understand it and validate, as opposed to me having to speak around it. I think, in a lot of other contexts, especially as a mental health professional, when you speak about your feelings, it's like, does that mean there's a clinical issue here? Like all of a sudden colleagues and friends are, sort of wondering what's going on. But that's not the case. It's called being human. And whether it's because of toxic leadership like you had, which I'm really sorry about and not surprised given where you are, or because of any other number of factors in your life, when you have those feelings, not if, but when, can you speak about it with someone who you trust? And if that person's close to you, then that's a great blessing. So that's been huge for me and for my marriage. Frankly.
Right. So getting to that level of vulnerability where you can share who you truly are, and the fact that even though you are this professional, even clinician in psychology, doesn't mean you too don't have those feelings.
Yeah, that's just bullshit. Yeah. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So once I accepted that and was able to share it, it was a game changer for everything. I think a lot of people, it mirrors what happens in the corporate world, where CEO might come home and feels like he or she needs to really button up, not show a lot of vulnerability, needs to be the leader all the time, needs to be always on their game. And if that translates into the same, I'm going to call it callousness, although I mean that seriously, like just covered up, like a covering up of the feelings at home. That I think is where people get into real trouble. And the consultations that I've done for people in the C-suite is typically when they can't speak about their feelings with anyone in their private world.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be, in the pages of the Wall Street Journal. Right. It doesn't need to be like on your social media feed, but it does have to be getting, like I say, out of your mind, out of your heart, and into the ears of somebody else.
Yeah. And I love that you said out of your heart, because there's like that saying by, I think it's Rumi, where when you start to let the light in, through the cracks, that's where you can really start to heal. And, and I believe that's where a lot of transformation comes from.
Sure.
Because when you are able to be your whole self and your authentic self, you then don't feel like you have to have this armor up to be someone perfect or perceived as in a certain way, or to be what others expect. And it's interesting you're talking about these CEOs and leaders and how you've seen them behave with this kind of mask that they're wearing.
Guard, yeah.
Guard, right? For me, it actually showed up a lot as resentment at home, because there was so much that I was trying to keep up with every day. And then at home is where I felt most comfortable. So I could just unleash it. My husband, bless his heart, 18 years later, he adores me more than ever. But I worked a lot on myself, right? And it did heal me and then our marriage. And so what would you say about people who maybe experience that resentment as a reflection of some of what they're trying to keep up with?
So there's a lot of different ways that anxiety can express itself. Resentment criticism, anger, addiction. And when we don't deal with actual anxiety at the root and what's the root of those feelings and speak about it in a, as you put it, vulnerable way, which is exactly what it is, it tends to express itself in one of those different directions. It's either the fight or flight. So the resentment, anger, criticism is more fight. Addiction, withdrawal, depression is more flight, right? But it's the fight or flight response. Make no mistake. And all those things, when you're speaking with someone who's going through that and expressing lots of irritation or anger, or, edginess at home, if you probe a little bit, if they're open to it and speaking about the anxiety at the root of it, that just softens the whole picture and can really create a lot more connection, wholeness, and groundedness to be able to make better work decisions. That's the irony, is that if you keep up the criticism or the anger or the fight or flight or whatever it is, or the addiction, can take a person to a certain point, but the wheels will come off if you keep trotting down that path.
Absolutely.
And then it's a big mess.
Absolutely. And what comes to mind is just like how draining that is, like that vicious cycle that anxiety keeps people living within in their own minds when they don't know how to kind of go in and shift some of their thoughts or choose to refocus or choose to ground, right? So what would you say that you see with yourself, your clients, your family members, when your energy gets really, really drained? How are you lifting yourself back up, and how do you see your clients lift themselves back up?
Yeah, it's all about connection. So, I mentioned connection with others. I know that spirituality is something that you've written about and talked about. And I think that can be there also, where people feel connected to a greater purpose, a greater sense of life. And where they're grounded, whether that's through mindfulness or whether that's through, spiritual practice, other spiritual practices, I should say, or anything. Part of that also is acceptance of oneself, that I don't need to be perfect, and I can be comfortable in my own skin and engaged in this practice where I don't have to have mastery over the entire world. Like, it's okay for me to let go a little bit and to be all right. There's also our connection with ourselves. So through self-care, sleep, exercise, diet, accepting our limits, shutting off your phone, recalibrating and rebalancing. And I think in all these three domains, with ourselves, with others, and in the spiritual world, it comes down to, can we accept our flaws, our faults, our struggles, our anxiety, and then use that as a starting point.
That is so important, that self-acceptance, like accepting that you're just human.
Yep.
And as long as you are moving through your life in a way that is pretty ethical and moral, that it's okay to misstep. It's okay to have mistakes.
You will misstep. Life is messy. People are messy.
Right.
Like, I don't know a single human being is perfect. And
right.
That's
what I teach my kids? It's part of the journey. What I teach my kids is that you can always right your wrongs, right? Because I'm like, unless you're doing something that is so inhumane, which that we're not even talking about those things, right? But that's a different story. But you can always right your wrongs. So if you yell at someone on accident, if you say a curse word to someone and you didn't mean to, like, these reactions that are just normal tendencies, especially as, kids at that age, that they're just going to go through these testing moments and see what they can get away with. You can go back to that person that you hurt, that you inflicted hurt upon, and you didn't mean to, but you did. And you can say, I'm sorry. You can right that wrong, and it's okay. Right?
Two most important words in the English language.
It's okay. Oh, I love it. Okay. What would you say you would go back and tell your younger self, knowing everything you know now? What advice would you give yourself?
Man. It's okay to struggle. You don't have to be perfect. It's not going to always be, cakewalk. Keep the faith. Just, keep trotting. Prioritize your relationships more. I think that I focused a lot on productivity. It's kind of part of being in the Harvard system, and then part of starting a clinic that's seen 10,000 people. You got to move, and you got to groove, and you got to do things. And I think it's good that I did that, because I can relate to people in the business world now in a way that, I don't think I would have been able to, having, staff and having business decisions to make and having, clinical decisions to make and that responsibility. But it did come at a cost at certain points. And I think that that could have been softened had I spoken about that struggle with someone at each point along the way.
Yeah, really good point. You have a masterclass.
I do.
So I'm sure that my listeners would love to hear all about what that experience entails.
Well, it's been really anxiety provoking to put together. Let me tell you that. Had to delve into my own anxiety in new different ways to try to make the program as accessible and relevant and human as possible. But essentially, there are 4 modules. It's based on a TEDx talk that I gave last year, which gives me a ton of anxiety to even talk about because over 500,000 people have actually watched this thing. So that's kind of crazy. There's a 4-step process that I put together for that talk involving not how to get rid of your anxiety, but how to actually work with it and make it a strength. And the class has 4 modules based on that. It's not intended to get rid of your anxiety. That is not the goal. If you want to get rid of your anxiety, don't call me. If you want to learn to use it in a positive way, that's what the class is about.
Very cool. And is this a live class or is this like an evergreen course that lives on your website?
Yeah, so the video course is evergreen and people can go through the modules as they see fit, but there is a group coaching component for people who sign up, and that meets about twice a month.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so both.
Very cool. And where can my listeners find you?
My website, dhrosmarin.com. There's a page for the masterclass, but I love to just hear from people. So how this conversation resonated or other things. I've got an email list that goes out once a week, really brief. And, I love to connect with people around all topics related to anxiety.
Fantastic. And last question we're going to leave my listeners with. If there is just one truth that they can take away from you on intention, time, energy, any of the things that we touched upon today, what is one truth that you want them to walk away with?
Oh man, that makes me anxious, that question. I think that mental health and mental wellness and mental struggles are a part of life. And the only question is whether you are aware of it or not. Everyone's got something. So whatever your thing is, own it and figure out how to deal with it. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a challenge. And therein lies the opportunity to unleash something really great from within once you figure it out.
That is beautiful. Well, thank you, David. This has been a lot of fun and very, very enlightening. And I will say it's a breath of fresh air chatting with you about something that otherwise I think for some people feels heavy, right? So thanks for making it lighter for all of us.
Well, thanks for having me on your show.
Really you're so welcome. And everyone, you know what to do. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the things that help the show reach more people. I am always grateful. And if you haven't yet, get your copy of my book, I Can Fit That In, at erincoop.com. Till next time.